Hi, everybody. I am Liz Merrill. I'm with Open Space Mediation, and I am really so happy and honored to have Andrea Hips here. She is a divorce coach who I've gotten to know through Clubhouse and through social media. And we're going to be talking today about her practice and some issues that she sees in her work as a divorce coach. And also, we're going to talk about her new book, which I'm really excited to read. Okay, so Andrea, why don't you just talk a little bit about yourself and your background and your practice and let people get to know a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me here because my connection to you was very immediate. And for those of you who are listening or watching that don't know Liz yet, you need to know that she embodies everything that mediation is, which is
Oh,
calm, rational, gracious, forward thinking, present person in the world. So I highly recommend.
I'm going
Um,
to carry that with me all day. Thank you.
Good. And all week, I hope. My name is Andrea Hibbs, and I am a licensed social worker and I'm a certified divorce coach. And my practice is to really help people get rid of their divorce debris. And divorce debris can happen all along the spectrum of whether or not you're thinking about getting divorced, or you're in the middle of your divorce, or you're 5 or even 10 years out from having been divorced. How we tell the story to ourselves and to our families about our experience of divorce really impacts the way generations of our family experience life. And we take it really lightly in the beginning with divorce. And so my goal is to really help people walk through the gravity of the situation with a different kind of grace and a different kind of attention to what are the choices I can make as I'm going through it to create two address families, and really to not think about my house and their house, or when I have the kids or when I don't have the kids, but we are fundamentally shaping the structure of our family, but we are not changing the mission of our family. And so I'm really a companion and a champion and a guide and a challenger, honestly, on that path. And I love it dearly. And like you said, I also am an author. I just wrote or finished a book, The Best Worst Time of Your Life, for practices to get you through the pain of divorce. And so my approach has a lot more to do with what do we do with all of this that happens in divorce, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of logistics, but there's a whole lot more emotions. And if you don't really dive into what does it mean to have all of these feelings, you will derail the logistics part of your divorce.
That's so true. So it sounds like you're really talking about going through your divorce with intention rather than in a reactive state,
Absolutely.
which
The
is,
conscious divorce, or the conscious, everybody sort of throws that word around, but it is, there's a way in divorce to become a victim to the situation and a victim to the process and a victim to your own fight or flight reaction, just like you said, and really making sure that you stay in not only a power place, but the driver's seat to direct your divorce rather than having it happen to you.
yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I find so true is that once you're able to sort of separate your own self, your feelings, your reactions from your soon to be ex, you're able to take a lot more control. You're able to set your boundaries up more, you know, more reasonably, and with more intention. So I
Yeah,
have to ask you this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just think you're touching on something so important. And that, to me, that's the art of divorcing well, is when you realize I am actually able and capable of handling anything my former partner throws at me. And I think that's where the victim status really starts, is, well, I'm going to have a bad divorce, or it's going to be hard because he or she is so difficult. And I will never contest that people are difficult. People are difficult, but you can grow in your own ability to manage them and manage you in the process in a way that doesn't sort of throw it all up in the air.
Yeah, yeah, that's so good. So I have a question for you that I'm sure every single person asks you, but I'm curious to ask you as well. How have you seen things change since COVID? And was it different, say, this summer than it is now that we're kind of coming out of that? Or has it just sort of been a continual shift? in one.
Yeah, I think that people have obviously gotten a lot more reflective during COVID. They've obviously had a lot more compressed living circumstances, which in some people I have observed that has created new growth and new connections. And in far more people, and probably just because of the work I do, it has created more of a sense of disconnect or a reality check that, wow, this has either needs to change dramatically or end. And so it's been sort of a sad reality. Now, that being said, divorces have actually gone down a bit during COVID because of the push-pull. There was a New York Times article about it about a month ago, that the sort of push-pull experience of now's not the right time, even though we might know that it's going to happen. Just the logistics of COVID have pushed people back into sitting still. But as things start to open up, I do imagine that there will be more people able to and interested in taking those difficult next steps.
Yeah, and they are difficult. So you work with couples from all ages, from young couples to couples who are, their kids are already grown and they might be in retirement. And obviously, there are logistical issues to divorces that are different between in your different seasons of life. But I'm wondering if there are any through lines between all of these that you see, or many of them that you see, emotionally, that sort of transcend how much money you have or where the kids are going to live, or those practical matters of divorce.
Yeah, I think there's several things. The first would be the mirror that you end up looking in. I think divorce puts a mirror up to you and puts a mirror up to your behavior and puts a mirror up to all the things, not only that you're really proud that you were able to offer to your relationship, but that you're really sad that you kind of didn't offer or offered in a way that wasn't helpful. And
Mm,
so that mirror experience and that sense of regret or wishing something to be different in the past, even in your own self, to me, and the thoughtful people and the people that are really trying to get to that place of deep peace and freedom post-divorce, that is in every age of person. And
yeah.
right next to that is, I wish I just would have known better. And so many things you learn as you go through the process of divorce and as you march toward healing, that you're like, gosh, if I just could have known this 10 years ago or 5 years ago, I might have been able to land this plane a little bit different and not gotten divorced. So that's a very normal, albeit painful, emotional course that's in everybody. I would also say that there's some measure of complete and total wheels off at some point.
Yeah.
There's just an experience of, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I don't know where we're going. This doesn't make sense. I don't know how this is going to happen. I'm worried here. I can't just the insanity of your head
Yeah.
and your heart, frankly, is definitely part of it. And then I think there's also, for people, a real fear that they will not have control of the story of their divorce in the public. I think people want to and try to look good, and they want to make sure they can keep their friends nearby, and they want to keep their family on their side, and they want to keep their kids on their side, and they don't want to be misunderstood. And the push to really keep control of that story ends up being ultimately a lot harder, because of course we can't control what people think of us. And that really is just a journey of back into, how do I act out of a place of real integrity through this whole process, so that regardless of what people say about me, I know what I can say about me.
That's huge, right? Being able to just, stay in that place. And it's so hard.
It's very
It's
hard.
so
It's very
hard.
hard. And I have said before that it's really, to me, it's tribal, because we're tribal people and we want to know that we're knit into some sort of community family system. And when you get divorced, you're exiting the structure. And all of a sudden it feels like every person you've connected with is up for grabs, and who's going to get that person? Is he or she going to get that person, or am I going to get that person? In order to get or keep that person, I have to convince them that I'm the one that you should feel sorry for. And I'm the one that was wronged. And I'm the one that put up with all the stuff. And you really end up sort of becoming a victim yourself. And that's a really hard shift to make. But I do notice that it is something people have to contend with.
Yeah, everybody's going to have to contend with that.
Yeah.
Um, going through divorce maybe just sort of points that up more quickly or heightens it or brings it to the forefront, even if you don't want it to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very exposing. It's like, okay, now I'm out here on my own. Whereas before I was just kind of in this nucleus of spouses and kids, and I was an entity. And now it feels like, when the kids aren't with me and they're all over there and it's just me, where do I belong and who cares and who's going to be on my side with me?
Yeah. So let me ask you this: when you work with individuals, do you work with individuals and couples, right?
I do. Yes. I would say the majority of my work is with individuals who are often in a couple where the other person won't participate or can't
Mhm.
participate for some reason, or they're just personally more motivated in the sort of self-growth arena. But I do also work with couples quite a bit now. That's been a new change for me in the last couple of months.
Nice. My change has shifted from working more with couples to working more with individuals because I'm a mediator, of course, and
Yeah.
people come to me for mediation, or one person will come to me for mediation and say, can you help? And I'm like, I can try. And they might be really motivated and their spouse is like, nope, I don't like her. I don't want this, or, and I want to go with attorneys, or I want to do it by myself.
Right.
So then I end up supporting the person who came to me originally. And, that's been really interesting for me because it's a little bit of a departure from what I thought I would be doing, but
Sure.
I really enjoy it. So on that note, I have a question for you that I struggle with. Um, and that is when you have somebody who comes to you who's like, I want to get divorced and I'm really afraid and I don't know what the path looks like, and they can't like, you know, light the match, right? To get the ball rolling. And so what do you tell people who are sure that they're ready, but they're afraid of the cost, or they're afraid of the backlash, or they're afraid of all the things that you are afraid of when you get divorced?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question because I don't know if I would agree that they're totally ready at that point, right? Because
Mm.
in order to fully walk the spectrum of being ready, which is a weird word even to put on the experience, but you're having to evaluate, how does this shift my children's experience of life? How does this change my own experience? How does this change my family, my partner's family, my career, my travel plans, my retirement, you're walking through all of these different facets and going, okay, I can maybe picture that this could be doable in all of these areas, or I'm willing to walk through whatever it takes to help myself and my people change through all of these things. In order to do that, I have to agree to walk through a 1 to 3 year process.
Mhm.
And that's what I always tell people, especially when they're on that cusp, but you're saying, if I'm not ready to go, is don't do it until you
Mhm.
are ready to grow. I don't think you can be ready to blow it all up. I mean, that's essentially what's happening with divorce, is you're undoing something. You're taking away the known and you're walking into the unknown. And
Mhm.
readiness is a hard thing to sort of grab onto. But are you willing to now enter a process? That's a question I feel like people can answer. I'm not ready. I'm scared to death, but I am willing to walk through with a guide like you, like me, to go through these multiple years of breaking and remaking. And that's what divorce to me really
Mhm.
is.
Yeah, that's such a good differentiation. So if you have somebody who's like, I think I want to get divorced, but I'm afraid, and you can tell they're not ready, but in their mind that, they're already starting to like imagine, post-divorce life and really like it, but they're not ready, as you say, do you just say, come back when you're ready, or do you start working with them then, or?
Typically by the time somebody's calling a divorce coach, that word has already gotten into their head enough that they're willing to have that conversation. And I do work with people who know where they want to be, but they don't understand or are, as you said, afraid of the path to get there. And I think those fears are based in, am I going to lose my financial standing in the world? And am I going to lose my connection to my kids and my community? Those
Mm-hmm.
are the primary drivers. If you could tell some of these people you're going to be financially okay and you're going to have a strong relationship with your kids and your kids are going to be able to integrate this story well into their lives, there would be a whole lot less unreadiness.
Mhm.
But I think
Yeah.
it's the risk of going, I don't know how this is going to impact the people closest to me, which includes myself and includes my kids. And not being able to have that guarantee, I think keeps people for a very long time in uncomfortable relationships. And frankly, I get why you would stay there. I'm not pro-divorce any more than a cancer doctor's pro-cancer.
Mhm.
Just know that when you're asking the question, what will this divorce do to my kids and do to me, you also need to give equal airtime to what is this marriage doing to me and to my kids. And so
Yeah.
putting both of those in clear sight and being able to value it that way sometimes helps us to make the move either back into our relationship to invest again, or forward into our relationship to look at different ways of relating going forward, which may include divorce.
Right, right. There's so much uncertainty about the outcome, and it depends on so many other people than yourself. And so that kind of leads me to another question for you, which is when a lot of divorces. I mean, and you can skin a cat in many different ways, right? Sometimes people do it themselves. Sometimes they hire a mediator. Sometimes they have a collaborative divorce process. Sometimes they just have attorneys doing it for them. Um, in any Either way, a lot of times you end up needing a lot of people, right? You need a financial advisor, you're going to need attorneys, you're going to need a mediator, you're going to need a divorce coach. And sometimes there's resistance around that because it's a lot, and people
Mhm.
feel daunted by that. But then once you're there, you being like whoever is getting divorced has a team of people who's helping them navigate the legal system, because that there's depending on where you are, or maybe everywhere, it can be very scary and challenging and full of even more unknowns.
Mhm.
um, so when you are working with a client who has these people around them, how closely do you work with, say, the attorney or the financial neutral or the mediator?
Sure. You know, in a lot of ways, it depends on what the client's situation is and the degree to which they want there to be shared information. So, in some cases, I work with attorneys who request a confidentiality agreement between us, and that my client then allows me to share my notes
Mm.
with the attorney so that the attorney is assured that there's nothing sort of being written or would compromise their legal case. And then there are times when everything that I'm doing is completely siloed off just with that person. And yes, while we might be working on what questions do you need to be asking your attorney and what considerations do you need to put into your financial plan, I'm not directly relating to them. I'm equipping the client to have better and more useful and more efficient and therefore more affordable conversations with the professionals that they have gathered around them.
That's great. That's great because, right, from at least from the financial, well, yeah, from the financial standpoint, most people don't know diddly squat about divorcing and what it looks like, and how to even approach dividing assets, especially if you've been married for a really long time, because you might have assets in all different kinds of places. And
Yeah.
I find that often, I hate to say this, but often women really don't have either the confidence or the knowledge, or they just haven't been used to being in charge of their finances, or don't even know really what they have. And then they don't know the questions to ask, and they don't know how to approach it. And so I'm glad that you're able to do that for people.
Yeah, and I think that's where because of that gap of information and knowledge, that's where all the fear starts to live.
Mhm.
And so I'm afraid my finances are not going to be able to support me, is really, I don't really know my finances. And even if I did, I don't understand the rules in my state around what child support or spousal support look like. Well, those are questions that can be answered. And so how do we put ourselves in the driver's seat with our professionals to say, okay, the next meeting I have with my attorney, I need to make sure that I walk out understanding what are the factors that go into directing the child support number and the spousal support number, and how does that help me calm down, or where does that create more questions for me that I then need to go back again. And really, I think I think people go into their attorney's office or go into their financial advisor's office as passive, tell me what I need to know is going to happen in my divorce and to me, versus coming in going, I've got a list here of questions that I need answered in order to put myself at ease around, just light on the next step.
Yeah, exactly. I have a friend who's a financial advisor, and I always hear her say, to say to, well, when she's talking to people about who coming to work with her, she says,
Mhm.
don't come into my office and cry or have a fit, or don't have questions, because it's expensive. And if you come in prepared, and have an agenda, you can be a lot more efficient with your time. You can get a lot more information, and you're not being passive. You're not being reactive. You're not, you're being there with a clear purpose and focus.
Yeah.
So that's great.
And really using them for what they're great at. You want to pull in the right people for what they're great at. And I'm not a great attorney, and I'm not great at figuring out your finances, but I'm really great at helping you hold the emotional chaos that is your divorce and not letting it ruin the conversations that you need to be having with those very important guides that are also on your team.
Yeah. And that's huge. That's so huge. And I think people need that, because going into an attorney's office might make you feel triggered or scared or whatever, and your attorney doesn't want to hear it, and you might feel embarrassed to share it. But that doesn't mean that all of those feelings aren't there shaping your reactions, or shaping your decisions, or shaping how you're moving forward. And if you don't have somebody to work with you on those things, like you said, I mean, the wheel can just completely fly off, and everything becomes disorganized and discombobulated. And that can really result in a lot of, I don't want to say wasted time, but time better spent.
Yeah. It's expensive time.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
So if there was one thing or more than one thing, that you wish that you could impart to the legal arm of the whole divorce process, is there something that you see that you would like to change, or
I
have divorce attorneys know?
Sure. I think that most of the attorneys that I work with see the value of a divorce coach who is able to offload from them clients that are unable to or just unskilled at coming to their office with a clear picture of what they want, ready to make decisions, and able to handle the chaos of the moment.
Mm,
And so, where divorce coaches step in is to really make your work more efficient. And in doing so, you're able to add more clients and do more work in the space that you are happiest in. And so, the attorneys that I work with sort of see that. And I think there's probably a lot of attorneys who are having to sort of play part divorce coach in some ways in areas that they're not interested in. And so, sort of seeking out those relationships, I think is really worthwhile.
that's great. So you wrote a book.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear about it. Could you tell
Thank
me about it?
you. Yes, thank you. It's coming out April 30th, and
Right
it's
around
called
the
The
corner.
Best Worst Time of Your Life: 4 Practices to Get You Through Divorce. And I just, when I was going through my own divorce, I think I read every single book possible on the topic of divorce, on the topic of pain, on the topic of acceptance. And what I found was there was a lot of stuff that would talk about the logistics. There was a lot of stuff that would talk about the high road and co-parenting, but I couldn't really find many stories where they just talked about the pain.
Mm,
And that's really the thrust of my book, is how do you look at and face the pain, and start to not only receive it as the invitation that it is, but put it to work for you in creating a bigger and more beautiful life going forward.
mm,
Because where we resist is where we won't move on. Our life is only as big as that which we can say yes to. And I think when divorce comes, we're just a solid no. I mean, we're just like, "Ugh."
yeah.
And I get it. I was there too. And so it's partly my own story of no, turning into yes, and it's partly direction for how to help you approach your own no in a friendly way and help it to move into, a yes. And so to me, the ultimate path of divorce is how to say yes to a life you didn't expect. And
Mm,
so this book is about how you say life to how you say yes to a life you didn't expect, even if you're the person that initiated the divorce, and especially if you're the person who is receiving one.
yeah, that's awesome. So, do you work much with clients once they've gotten divorced, or once they've gotten divorced, you're like, go, little bird?
Uh, the majority of my clients are post-divorce people, actually,
Oh,
who,
okay.
who are still co-parenting with someone that they hate, who are having to parent in ways that feel less than perfect and ideal, and who are really tired of just the drag on their own emotions of what life looks like right now.
Mm, mhm. Oh, shoot, my dog, can you? She's going crazy. Um, I could talk to you all day.
Sure,
And
let's
I
do
know, all
it.
right, let's go. Um, well, I want to be respectful of your time, but I want to ask you one more question. And that is about high conflict people. I was just reading your blog about that. And as I, move more and more into this space and read more and more, just on social media, reading what people write, it feels like a lot of people are in relationships with high conflict people. And that could be perception or could be the truth or, whatever it is. How do you have some tips for people who are either co-parenting with a high conflict co-parent or getting divorced from somebody or just living with somebody trying to figure out how to
Right.
manage it?
Yeah, it's high conflict people are generally described as people who have all or nothing thinking, who are really good at blaming other people for their problems, who have intense or unmanaged behaviors, or excuse me, emotions, and then they have extreme behaviors or threats.
Mm,
So if you have one of these people in your life, either that you're married to or that you're getting a divorce from, you need to do two very important things. First, you need to learn your partner's or your former partner's operating system, meaning most people who are high conflict are extremely predictable.
mm,
They've been doing this for a very long time, and you've been on the other side wishing and hoping that every single time you interact with them, it would be different. So we have to squish that. We have to compress that and make who they are and who you know them to be the same thing.
mhm.
So understanding who they are and who they are always going to be is very helpful in reducing the amount of time wasted wishing they would do something different. Second is you need to protect yourself. And by protecting yourself, it means a number of things, but most importantly, learning how to communicate in a way that holds on to yourself, that is brief and informative, right? Friendly and firm. We all know Bill Eddy's great Biff method, but we need to get ourselves in a place to truly interact with this person in a very different way than we interact with everyone else. And I think people really resist that because they're just really hoping that their high conflict person will start acting normal. And
Yeah.
if you could just get your own argument rational and explained right and at the right time, and no,
Yeah.
you're not gonna win. So find a way to get your wind out, or get your sails out of their wind, and start directing your own behavior against who they are always going to be. Those
Yeah.
are my big steps.
Those are great. Those are great. So, in your mind, is there a difference between a narcissist and a high conflict person?
A narcissist would fall into the category of high conflict person. And what Bill Eddy did by giving us this high conflict person title was really just, it pulls us out of needing to diagnose people, because most people, well, not most, but many people who find themselves with emotional or mental health disorders are not diagnosed,
No,
right?
they don't
And
want to self-reflect.
they don't, exactly. And so whether or not you can figure out if they're a narcissist or a borderline or histrionic or any number of things really doesn't matter, as long as you know that they are high conflict. As
Right.
long as you know that what it means to interact with this person on a daily basis will take so much different effort, focus, and intention than it does to relate to everyone else in your world.
Yeah.
you will be more set up to embrace life with them. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways that we can do that, like I said, with communication, but it's really learning, first of all, that they will not be different and it's not you that's doing it wrong. And there are ways to communicate and interact that don't inflame the situation further.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And if people could just get that right out of the gate, they would save so much time, like
Yes.
crafting, 3-page emails explaining why you're not in the wrong, or bending yourself and contorting yourself to try to get that person to understand you
Mhm.
when they're just not, you know?
Right. Yeah. The baseline with a high conflict person is that you will be misunderstood. And that's a very painful feeling for most of us. We don't like to be misunderstood, but your intentions will be maligned and your outcomes will be suspect, and there's no winning. And yet people who find themselves in relationship to a high conflict person find themselves running really fast trying to still win. And
Yeah,
you just really have to give up the fight and try a different tactic.
yeah, yeah. So when you have co-parents, and one of them is a high conflict person and they're trying to sort out a parenting plan, is there a way that you um,
You
guide
know,
them?
it's the same messaging as when you're trying to just figure out how to live with them, is how do
Mhm.
you communicate in a way that pulls the anxiety and the anger back. And another great piece that Bill Eddy has kind of helped us all to teach people is, so what's your proposal?
Mhm.
And when you do that, you're really shifting that person from their reactive spot into how do they want it to be. And that's just a great thing to bring back to the high conflict person, is what's your proposal? And then when you get the proposal, you can either agree, disagree, or say, I need to think about it. And
Yeah,
that just turns the volume way down on the back and forth.
yeah. Because if anybody feels like they're being heard, high conflict or not, if
Mhm.
you're asking them, what do you think? Um, that kind of can de-escalate because they're not feeling like they're on the defensive. They're feeling heard and they're feeling like, oh, you actually want to know?
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll talk about what's important to me.
Right. And
Yeah.
it pulls you out of the emotional reactive side and into the reasoning side of your brain, which wants to support, better goals for you. So
Yeah, exactly. So if anybody wants to find you, where do they go?
I have a website, AndreaHipsDivorceCoach.com. There's two P's in hips, and on there you can sign up for my weekly email. You can buy my book. You can go follow my Instagram account, my Facebook account, my LinkedIn account, and I have newly a YouTube account where I have put some videos up. So lots of free support out there. I just really would like for people who are going through divorce to have guardrails on what it means to walk this way well.
Mm,
I also offer a 30-minute complimentary call for people who want to just sort of uh, explore the idea of whether or not a divorce coach would be supportive to them at the point that they are in their own process.
that's so great. You offer such a great service, and I know so many people benefit from it, especially families and kids who
Thank
really
you.
need their parents to keep it together.
Thank you. Yes, it's hard, but if one person can keep it together, that goes a long way for the family.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was really nice
Thank
to
you so
speak with
much, Liz.
you.
I adore you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
I can figure out how to stop this. Oh, here we go. Bye.